A few days ago, I made a video talking about the worst talent in all of Paladins, and also what makes a good versus a bad talent in regards to making fun and unique playstyles for each champion. In this video, I kind of want to expand that discussion and talk about card design, because there are some champions that have far better card design than others in this game for the purpose of making unique playstyles and making choices feel impactful. I think it's especially important to bring up card balance right now because of Evil Mojo's new design philosophy with the item store, where they're trying to make a lot of really powerful item choices to force you to have more careful decision making when it comes to, ooh, do I want this powerful effect or do I want this powerful effect? They haven't done a perfect job of it yet, but the point is, we have a lot stronger items now, and it does make the item store more interesting and engaging. And certainly, the same thought process can be applied, and has been applied, to certain cards for characters in this game. And I think when you have to make more impactful choices because you have so many good options to choose from, it leads to more vivid and more fun game design. So first, let's talk about what appears to be my golden child when it comes to good card and talent design in this game, and that is, of course, Buck. You guys already know how much I like Buck's talents and how they create unique playstyles for this character, but his cards also achieve a similar effect. Take a look at some of these builds I have for Buck. I have 6 different builds, and I could make even more now that we have 9 loadout slots. And Buck has a lot of really cool build diversity because he has so many cards that scale really high. He has a lot of really good cards, and that forces him to make impactful choices, but it also opens up niche playstyles that can form within certain playstyles. For example, you can have multiple ensnare builds, you can have multiple bounce house builds that achieve different goals, and it's all thanks to all of these cards being so good. For example, just in this bulk up build here, we have Deep Breath, 30% damage reduction, that's a lot, for 2 seconds after using Recovery, or ever so slightly less damage reduction for 4 seconds after using Heroic Leap. That's really good scaling. Stomping Ground. Do I even need to mention how powerful this card is? 70% cooldown reduction after getting an elimination. But guess what? All of his other cooldown cards are also really good. So if you don't want to rely on eliminations, you can actually comfortably use something like Reconstruction and just casually reduce the cooldown of Recovery by 5 seconds. Or use Concussion and reduce the cooldown of Net Shot by 5 seconds. Or use Exhilarate and reduce the cooldown of Heroic Leap by 5 seconds, on top of stacking that with Seismic Wave, which admittedly doesn't scale as high. But you have a bunch of really high scaling cards, and especially when it comes to Ensnare, you can create some really interesting Ensnare loadouts, because he has really good cards for it. You can run Concussion if you want reliable, consistent damage without needing eliminations. And you can also run Bully, which is just a casual 60% lifesteal against targets slowed by Net Shot. That's freaking awesome. Or you can run Gotcha, which has 50% movement speed for 3 seconds after using Net Shot. The point is, you can make a lot of different combinations of cards for this character and have them work, and create different playstyles that all can be varying levels of viable, and have them be fun. There's a lot of fun to be had in concocting new builds for Buck, and if you ask players for good Buck builds, sure, they'll follow some trends, but you'll see differences in each and every Buck build, and yeah, there are a lot of ways you can build this character. Another good character when it comes to card design is Androxus, but Androxus actually a few years ago had a point where he faltered and has actually hurt his playstyle diversity ever since. So we of course have really good scaling cards on Androxus. I mean, just look at this build. Seething Hatred, just a casual 2.5 seconds of cooldown reduction on reversal after hitting an enemy with your weapon. Or you could run Disrupt. 6 whole seconds of cooldown reduction on the reversal at level 5. The scaling on these cards is monstrous, yet it's still pretty balanced. Honestly, like, this isn't breaking the game in any way, but it's a very fun way to build Androxus, and you feel like the choices of these cards are impactful. You feel like these cards make a difference. Same with, like, this ammo card, or Power of the Abyss, one of Androxus' best cards. Just completely reset the cooldown of Nether Step after hitting an enemy with reversal. That's a very cool playstyle point. Hit the reversal, get the dash back, it enables cool game mechanics as a result. And of course, we also have some cards like Elusive, 50% movement speed for 3 seconds after activating Nether Step, increase the distance of Nether Step, heal, a bunch of healing cards, especially Featherweights, actually. It didn't used to be as good, but it is at least a little bit more viable with Darkstalker because of the airtime, and that's just basically a personal Genos mark if you want. Watchful, 50% cooldown reduction after Elim. It goes on and on and on. And you have a lot of really impactful choices with Androxus, and you actually have quite a lot of playstyle diversity. Again, you do see some trends where some players favor certain cards over others, but if you ask 10 different Androxus mains for builds, you'll get 10 different builds. Because there are a lot of ways that you can build him, and you can really fine-tailor these loadouts to your personal preference and have the choices be good and impactful. But Androxus dropped the ball a few years ago when Evil Mojo decided, we're going to absolutely gut the fist cards. And I'm so sad about this, because Androxus actually had another playstyle that's effectively been killed. And I would love to see it come back. These fist cards, these two right here, Vengeance and Spiteful, used to have so much better scaling. And they used to create a unique playstyle where, with Spiteful, you would get 30% ultimate charge after killing an enemy with Defiance. You can't get an elimination, right, an assist, and you have to kill them with the fist. But if you do kill them with the fist, you get rewarded with a ridiculous amount of ultimate charge. And the same goes for Vengeance. It was basically kill to heal, but for your fist. And these cards, in tandem, created a really unique playstyle. But for some strange reason, when they were reworking Androxus, I think specifically, was it when they reworked Curse Revolver? I don't remember. But for some reason, they just decided to make these cards more consistent by making them so you basically generate ultimate charge and heal after hitting an enemy with Defiance. But that doesn't even work with his playstyle of Defiant Fist, because Defiant Fist is all about finishing an enemy with Defiance. And so these cards just became completely useless. That's the case where a card, having its scaling changed and having its application changed, has actually ruined a perfectly good playstyle for Androxus. And card design like that, where you make a really cool playstyle basically dead and weak and pointless, is not a good direction to take cards in. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Sati, who took a look at Andro's fist cards and decided, yeah, I'll just make all of my cards scale poorly. Sati is who I would consider a champion with some of the worst cards in the game, because most of them scale very poorly, and you feel like you don't have super impactful decisions on Sati. You have basically 2 cards that are impactful, and that's it. And so that's why you see most players run those cards. You have Step Off for your average window of opportunity build, and then you have Steady Predictions for your toxic ult spam build. And so those are basically her 2 only impactful cards. The rest of the cards have such terrible scaling that you usually just see a lot of samey builds, where they run the health card, maybe run a little bit of ammo, maybe run a little bit of closing time or something like that, or maybe run plated leggings just because you need to fill up points in the loadout. But none of these cards feel impactful, because look at the scaling. Remember Buck's DR cards. 30% damage reduction on recovery for 2 seconds, 25% damage reduction on heroic leap for 4 seconds. Plated leggings provides 15% for 1.5 seconds. That's nothing. That's so small. Like, yeah, I guess it's worthwhile to run this card, but that's because most of the other cards are crap, so I guess you're just running this, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel fun. Cards that scale too poorly result in sort of the illusion of choice, where, yeah, technically I have 16 options to choose from, but I'm usually just going to run the health card and then, I don't know, just fill with random crap that doesn't really feel that impactful, and there isn't really that much playstyle diversity when it comes to this character. An especially egregious card is Hyde. This has got to be one of the worst scaling cards in the game. At level 5, you don't even get 3/4 of a second of increased duration on invisibility after deploying Dead Ringer. Not even 3/4 of a second. Guys, come on. What the heck? Especially with the stealth radius changes that happened this year. What is the point of this card? That's so bad. It used to be stronger in the past, so much so that it had to get nerfed to this point. But I mean, really? Can we not at least do a second? It's just so tiny. And cards that scale this poorly are just not fun to play. There's a reason why Cards to the Max is one of the most popular game modes in the game, because it makes cards really strong. And obviously, scaling every card to level 7 or doing something silly like that is too far. But the point is, when you have a lot of really good options to choose from on all of these characters, it's a lot more fun than having a bunch of crappy cards that don't scale well at all. You don't feel like your choices are impactful, and you usually just run the most bland stuff because that's the most reliable stuff. And if you don't run that, then you just feel like you're wasting space. You don't want to feel like you're wasting loadout points on something. That's always such a bad feeling. Then there's another issue with cards that also really hurts the playstyle diversity of characters, and that's when you have cards that should synergize with talents, and would be really good if they did, but they just straight up don't work with the talent because of some stupid reason. For example, we have Caspian here, who has a very weird dynamic with his cards, because he does have a few very impactful cards that have good scaling, and it makes them fun cards to use, and it makes them a good choice. Like the finer things, 60% movement speed for 2 seconds after hitting an enemy. That's what I'm talking about right there. That is a very good, impactful card. And some might even say it's his strongest card, and that's because there aren't really a lot of other impactful choices for Caspian. You do have some cards, such as Deadly Flourish, which increases the travel speed of Deadly Momentum. To me, it almost feels like a mandatory card because it's the default speed of Deadly Momentum is so slow. But you also have cards that actively don't synergize together, even though their scaling is good. So, you have a Brief Respite, which the scaling of this card is really good. You can get up to 5 seconds of cooldown reduction after hitting at least one enemy with Rogue's Tempo. That is awesome. That's really good scaling. And you have Flurry. Reduce the cooldown of Deadly Momentum by 3.5 seconds for each enemy hit by it. Those both are really good scaling cards that have really cool use cases. And you would want to use them with a movement-based playstyle, right? Because duh, they both affect your movement ability. But guess what? You cannot use them with the movement talent, because the movement talent everywhere at once permanently sets the cooldown to 5 seconds and cannot have the cooldown be reduced through any other means. So if I make a build that looks like this, where we have Brief Respite and Flurry inside of it, I have wasted potentially 10 loadout points on 2 cards that would be really good, but don't work at all with this talent. And it's so disappointing. It's really, really disappointing. Because with a loadout like this, if the cooldown cards actually worked, Brief Respite would basically be the exact same card as Androxus' card, which reduces the cooldown of Nether Step by 100% if you hit the reversal. It's basically that, but for hitting Rogue's Tempo, because 5 seconds is 100% of the cooldown. Why can we not have that? Or Flurry. Reduce the cooldown of Deadly Momentum by 3.5 seconds for each enemy hit by it. Okay, so you have a very fast-paced, movement-based playstyle. If you hit 2 enemies, you instantly get Deadly Momentum back. That sounds cool to me. And you know what? If it turns out the scaling is too high with the talent, make it 2.5 seconds, which would be exactly half of the cooldown. That would be fine, and these cards would feel impactful to use, and you could create 2 different playstyles, where you would have like a Brief Respite and then movement speed cards for Deadly Momentum, like Deadly Flourish, or you could have Flurry and Deadly Flourish, or whatever you want. You would have much more playstyle diversity for Caspian, but as it stands, if you use those cards with the movement talent, you're wasting loadout points. But if you use them with any other talent, it feels wrong, because you're using movement cards on a non-movement based talent, and it's just not fun. And then you also have, besides the normal playstyle of just using the finer things, Deadly Flourish, Swift Strikes, maybe something like Casual Competency, you also have the playstyle for Caspian where you use the Shield card, Shoot and Dash, which is a pretty good card. 200 shielding for 3 seconds every time a stack of Piercing Momentum expires. It stacks on itself, and it could potentially be a good amount of self-sustain. But this and the other card, the similar card, each stack of Sharp Momentum heals you after it expires, actively fight against the duration cards. Shining Example, and what's the other one called? The other one that decreases the duration, or extends the duration. He shot first, right? This card. They actively fight against each other because you want your stacks to expire as much as possible, so you get as much shielding and healing as possible, but these extend the duration of the stacks, making them expire more slowly. It's not really a good combo, in my opinion, and that's also another sort of case where the cards don't synergize together. And when you have asynergistic stuff going on here, is that the right word? Asynergistic cards? It just makes very restricted build diversity. It means you have less options to choose from, and it's not a good feeling. And especially when you have asynergy with your talents, right? Where you have cards that actively don't work with the talent, it's really bad. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. A, you could just remove the restrictions from some talents, but B, you could just do what Fernando does. Fernando has a similar situation where he has a card that doesn't necessarily work with a talent, but they have specifically written in a clause to make it work with that talent. And I am, of course, talking about Aegis and the card Towering Barrier. Towering Barrier reduces the cooldown of the shield by 4 seconds, but with Aegis, you remove the cooldown entirely and replace it with a resource meter. This card would just straight up not work with Aegis, except they designed it to, by allowing the card to increase the rate of shield gain when using Aegis, and that scales with the level of the card. That's perfect! They know how to make a card still work with a talent when the talent would otherwise nix the card. I don't understand why we're leaving champions out to dry like this. Another problem with cards these days has to do with specifically lifesteal cards, in my opinion. Because Life Rip just got buffed to an extreme degree. Life Rip the item now applies 60% lifesteal to your character, and it means that most lifesteal cards just aren't effective in 2024 because they get completely outpaced by Life Rip. It's hard to justify running them when you could just buy Life Rip instead. And also if you try and stack them with Life Rip, they get absolutely decimated by diminishing returns because there's such a small increase, and then Life Rip makes that even worse because of how diminishing returns works in this game. A good example of this is Corvus's card. Corvus can provide an ally 12.5% lifesteal. Yes! Let's go. That's awful. 5 loadout points for this? Are you kidding me? I get that Corvus shares the effect. But really? Like this small in 2020-24? And a lot of lifesteal cards have the same problem where they just don't scale high enough these days. I would totally be fine with buffing up some of those cards. That might be controversial, but I mean, if Life Rip is allowed to go to 60%, why not allow characters who have lifesteal cards to enjoy using those lifesteal cards? Seems like a fine idea to me. And then there are just outdated loadout cards. There are a few of these in the game, and they're mostly on older champions. Most of my beef has been with newer champions from the past few years, but some champions from the beta also have their issues, and, well, Skye, I believe Ying as well, has the same card, where you get increased movement speed while out of combat. It's completely outdated. Nobody runs these cards, and these also just straight up need to be reworked, because they don't work. They're bad ideas. Another example is on Kinessa. She has also some very weird, outdated cards. Of course, I'm mainly talking about Lion Weight here. I bet you didn't even know this was a card, because of how redundant and outdated it is. After 1 second of standing still, regenerate 5 ammo every 2 seconds. Huh? Okay, right, because I'm always standing still with Kinessa, and also 5 ammo every 2 seconds will be enough. This card is horrendously outdated. I have not ever seen such an outdated card in my life, especially when open season exists, and we can just constantly generate ammo as long as we're hitting fully charged shots. So, outdated cards, they need a facelift. They need some love, they need to be redone and turned into cards that actually work in the modern era of Paladins. Ain't nobody using this card. This Seriously, when is the last time you've seen this card? It's crazy. So in general, I think it's important to have numerous well-scaling cards that provide the player with actual substantial choice, where they feel like their cards are impactful, and where they feel like their cards are giving them playstyle diversity. They can create different loadouts, and not feel like they're wasting loadout points or forced to go one card because it's so much better than another card. Having good options leads to more fun and more dynamic gameplay, and characters who do have a plethora of good cards to choose from have a much healthier loadout dynamic as a result. And characters that have really bad cards that don't scale well at all, or just provide effects that don't work with a talent or just don't make sense, have far worse loadout diversity, and as such, aren't really as fun when it comes to their customization, and that's something that Paladins sells itself on, is the customization. So having good customization is very, very important, and that's why I think many of these cards need to be changed. I think that over the past few years, Evil Mojo has been more afraid to give characters truly impactful and powerful cards, and have thus shied away from really increasing the scaling, to the point where we get cards like what Sati has, or some of Azan's cards. And while yes, there are always exceptions where some characters do have a few good cards, like, I don't know, Ray, or some of Nyx's cards, or Omen's Moore card, although that has its own issues too, they generally just don't like to scale cards as high as they used to, and I think that's a bad thing for playstyle diversity. I think it's more fun to have higher scaling cards. Again, that's part of why Cards to the Max is one of the community's most favorite limited time modes, because you get to actually have impactful cards, and a lot of characters don't normally have impactful cards. So yeah, I think it would be a great thing for the game's customization and for the fun of the game to boost some of these cards and make them feel better and make them feel like you have more of a choice in what you get to build in your loadouts. But as always, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments section down below. Am I right, or am I horrendously off base? Do you disagree? Perhaps you think that maybe cards like what Buck and Androxus and Eevee have should be reduced and actually made worse because they scale too high. I think that would be ludicrous, but maybe I'm missing something, so please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, if you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because yeah, we're making a bunch of Paladins content. I was going to release a guide at the end of last week, but sadly ran into some issues regarding the script writing, and so taking a bit more time on these guides. I'm trying not to rush them out. I'm trying to make them really high quality, but they will be out eventually. We're still making more guides. The Vor guide is not the only champion guide. There will be many more, so stay tuned for that. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.